Hey guys, M here from Transformers and Video Games, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at my official Transformers AM radio robot. So sit back and relax, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let's get right into this. Alright, so let's start off by taking a look at the packaging. Unlike G1 Blaster, this figure comes packaged in robot mode, and as you can see, they needed to use a much larger box in order to accommodate its considerable height. We've got the official Transformers branding in the upper left corner, and based on the faction symbol, AM Radio Robot is a member of the Autobots. Now, unfortunately, this figure wasn't given the respect of being assigned an official name, a function, or a bio, so rather than refer to it as AM Radio Robot for the entire video, and for a little bit of fun, I'm going to go ahead and name him myself. For the purposes of this review, I'm going to refer to him as G1 Mega Blast. Now, I'm certainly not the most creative person out there, so be sure to leave me a comment in the comments section if you have any other name ideas that you think could have been used. Along the bottom of the box on the left, it says 1987 Hasbro Inc., all rights reserved, and on the right it says Industria Argentina, and a Spanish to English translation reads, with national and imported components, batteries not included. Here's a look at the backside of the packaging. When it comes to Transformers artwork, this isn't exactly a stellar example. In fact, if I'm being honest, it's probably some of the worst Transformers artwork that I've ever seen. Along the bottom, they've included the instructions for transformation. Although there are only 4 diagrams, if you look closely, there are a number of little arrows that show you precisely what needs to be done in order to transform the figure from robot mode to radio mode. A translation of the instructions reads, place a 9-volt Duracell battery, preferably alkaline, in the compartment on the front of the robot. On the back are the tuning, power, and volume controls. To preserve the life of this AM radio, it is recommended not to touch the internal components except to change the battery. After use, turn the power to off. When the sound becomes weak, replace the batteries. Considering this is a vintage figure, Mega Blast comes packaged in a polystyrene insert that does a great job of keeping the figure secure for anyone who likes to display their collectibles in package. Okay, so now that we've got all that technical stuff out of the way, here's Mega Blast out of box and in hand. Again, it's a pretty tall figure, so I need to pull the camera back pretty far just to fit him in my shot. Taking a look at his upper body, you can see why I came up with the name Mega Blast. In my opinion, it looks like they took inspiration from G1 Blaster and from a certain leader of the Decepticons. I think the rationale for my G1 Blaster comparison is pretty evident. But if you don't see the Megatron tie-in right away, here's a side-by-side look at both of their faces. G1 Megatron has such a distinct-looking face that I can't imagine this resemblance being a mere coincidence. On a side note, what I'm guessing happened here is that similar to G1 Skylynx, Omega Supreme, and Shockwave, old Mega Blast here was probably a third-party figure that Hasbro simply licensed to release under the Transformers branding in Argentina to help address the demand for more product. That might explain the lack of effort in not giving him a name, tech specs, or even so much as an Autobot faction sticker anywhere on the figure. Looking down at his legs and feet, the design is very similar to G1 Soundwave, although unlike Soundwave, who has die-cast metal feet, Mega Blast is an all-plastic figure. The backside of the figure is fairly clean-looking due to the simple transformation that we'll see shortly. I actually think that the power and tuner dials on his back from the radio actually enhance the look of the robot mode slightly, since I don't think it would take much imagination to come up with a technical reason as to why a robot would have dials on his back like this. Overall, I think that the design of the robot mode is okay, but I think that G1 Soundwave and G1 Blaster both have much nicer looking robot modes overall, but as always, let me know what you think in the comments section. Now we'll take a quick look at articulation. The head will rotate left and right. The arms will rotate a full 360 degrees at the shoulder. He's got a ratcheted elbow joint. And he's also got a separate elbow swivel and a full 360-degree rotation at the fist. The legs will rotate a full 360 degrees at the knee. The feet are articulated due to transformation. And he's able to kick out his leg 90 degrees to the side. For a figure from this era, it actually has pretty respectable articulation. When it comes to accessories, Mega Blast comes with this really nice chrome sword accessory. The sword is actually very similar to the one that came with the pre-Transformers Microchange number 13 Walther P38 Uncle version of G1 Megatron, which is part of the reason why I called the figure Mega Blast. It takes a little bit of effort to get the sword into his hand, but once you've got it there, it actually looks pretty good. One complaint that I've got is that due to the looseness of his articulated wrists and the weight of the sword, it's very difficult to actually pose the figure properly holding the sword. Now it's time for the transformation. Collapse the upper arms into the forearms on both sides of the figure. Fold the feet back 90 degrees into the legs. Rotate the legs 90 degrees at the knees so that the radio speakers are facing the front of the figure. Then rotate the legs 90 degrees at the hips, then rotate them again 90 degrees at the knees, and click them into place to form the sides of the radio. Once you've done the same thing on the other side of the figure, turn the head 180 degrees and fold the face down into the radio, then lift the handle up, and that's it for the transformation. Looking at the little boombox mode, we can see that it really benefits from the 4 factory applied stickers, in particular the long one up top that shows the radio station details on the tuner and the one in the middle that has the cassette details. What's funny is that this is an AM radio, but the tuner shows AM and FM radio frequencies. In the center of the stereo, we've got a fake cassette deck, which actually serves a specific purpose for this figure, which we'll see shortly. And below that, there's one long button with molded details, representing 5 individual buttons that would commonly be used to operate a cassette deck. The speakers on the front look great and really make the stereo mode look realistic. Flipping it around to the back, we can see the company logo that reads Comando Toys Industria Argentina. Interestingly, there's no date of manufacture stamped onto the figure, but I suspect that it wasn't produced for very long. In the center on the left, we have the radio tuner, and on the right, we have the power button that also serves as the volume of the radio. Overall, I think they've done a really nice job on Mega Blast's radio mode. Okay, so without further delay, let's go ahead and fire up the radio. If you push the button in the front of the stereo, it releases a battery cover, which is on a pretty strong spring. Then grab your 9-volt battery and insert it the correct way by following what's indicated inside the battery compartment. Then all you need to do is turn the power dial to the right until it clicks and select the desired volume. Alright, so I've got the radio on a news station right now since I'd understandably prefer not to get a copyright strike from using unauthorized music. Tilting the radio forward, it's difficult to see in this light, but AM is actually illuminated in a red light along the top side of the radio. This particular light-up feature might seem like a bit of an unusual gimmick for them to include, but they were actually taking advantage of the light that was included for another very cool feature. I should point out that the speakers on the front aren't actual working speakers. I looked very closely and confirmed that there aren't any wires connecting the sides of the radio to the center section of the unit that's providing all the battery power. If I'm not mistaken, the sound is actually coming from those 3 little holes under the battery compartment eject button on the front side of the radio. I mentioned earlier that there was another cool light-up feature, but the one that I'm about to show you relates to the robot mode. When you turn the power on, the eyes glow a really cool red color, which makes Mega Blast look even less like an Autobot. When I discussed the articulation earlier, I said that the head will rotate left and right. Now, it'll technically do a full 360-degree rotation, but if you have this figure, I really wouldn't recommend doing that unless you want to risk damaging the wire that's powering the electronics in the head. And now for a little bit of fun, here's a quick comparison with G1 Blaster in robot mode. Although Blaster is boxier and almost more basic looking, I think it's got a stronger robot mode overall. Don't get me wrong here, there's things that I really like about Mega Blast, such as the design of the legs, the stability of the feet, and even the very articulated arms, but the face makes him look more like a Decepticon, especially with those glowing red eyes. In my opinion, Mega Blast stereo mode is every bit as good as Blaster's, with the exception of maybe the sticker cassette details, which by comparison gives it a bit of a cheaper appearance. I think the colors are good on both figures, but Mega Blast's color scheme is actually very reminiscent of one of the pre-Transformers microchange versions of Blaster. Speaking of the Takara pre-Transformers Blaster, it was actually a working radio that even came with a headphone jack and a pair of headphones. These cool features were all unfortunately removed when the figure was released under the Transformers branding, but it's still a very cool piece of Transformers history. If you enjoyed this review and are interested in seeing a similar G1 Transformers figure, check out my review of the original G1 Twin Cast. This is the original Takara version of the figure that came with Steeljaw, which I was lucky enough to add to my collection for a reasonable price a number of years ago. I'll leave a link to the review in the description, and possibly a clickable link to it right here in case you wanted to check it out. Okay guys, time to wrap this one up. In conclusion, would I recommend adding a Transformers AM radio robot to your collection? If I'm being completely honest, no I wouldn't, unless you're a die-hard G1 Transformers collector that's looking to try and complete an entire run of official Transformers figures from the 80s. Having said that, I do think it's a pretty cool figure, but it's just not worth the asking price nowadays. I had actually attempted to get the red and gray variant of the figure a few months ago, but got priced out of the bidding in the final moments of the auction. My suggestion for most collectors would be to get an original G1 Blaster if you don't already have one, or even the Encore reissue of G1 Twin Cast if you want an interesting variant of the figure that also comes with Stripes and Night Stalker, which are a couple of cool cassettes that are exclusive to the Encore release of the figure. Anyways, thanks for taking the time to check out my collector's guide to vintage 1980s Transformers. Take care.